when the podcast was launched, virtually within an hour of it being launched, I received a phone call from someone who knew me. And he said, I've just listened to that podcast. I said, fascinating. He said, are you guys on something?
Welcome to the How to Raise Money podcast for anyone who wants to raise other people's money for a business or property venture. Right now, there has never been more money on the planet, and there has never been more opportunity. This podcast will help you put the two together. So, if you need money for your business or property proposals from banks, lenders, angels, whales, or dragons, this is the podcast for you.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the How to Raise Money podcast with me again, Ray McLennan.
And it's with me, Nigel T. Best. Raymondo, how the devil are you?
I am having tech issues. As you can see, I have no background here. For those of you that are on YouTube, I don't have my usual How to Raise Money podcast on air behind me. For some reason, it's not coming up. We are getting an upgrade of fiber today, apparently, which may happen during this recording, but we'll see. You know what they're like with timings. They give you a sort of 15-hour window to stay in.
Yeah. Normally they sort of say, yeah, we'll be around. Could you free up the month of November to be available 24 hours a day for 30 days straight? And then we'll tell you on the 29th of November, we can't make it this month. So yeah.
Or we'll be around between 8 and 12 and you think, all right, okay. And then at 1 minute past 8 while you're in your pajamas, the guy appears. For the avoidance of doubt, I'm never in my pajamas at 1 minute past 8. I'm always up and running around much earlier than that, but that's another story.
Yeah, stark naked.
So this episode, this is, I suppose, part 2. We talked in the previous episode. If you haven't listened to that previous episode, I encourage you to switch off now, go back and listen to the previous episode, which is about corporate liens, L-I-E-N. Now, it's safe to say, Nigel, I think you can concur, it's the biggest response we've ever had to an episode.
By far.
Yep.
Yeah. Ray, you were joking with some of the responses. Are you guys on crack? Who do you think you're kidding? Or as the kids would say, that's cap. So,
okay.
So actually, folks, it's no cap. And if you don't know what that means, go ask your kids.
I don't know what it means, so I'll have to go ask mine.
Anyway, I had to.
So responses, lots of emails coming in. So yes, we did encourage people to email us, hello@htrmoney.co.uk, and we did. Boy, did we get emails in. Very, how can I put it? Emotive, colourful.
Yes, I think, Ray, if we put them into two piles, one pile saying the banks are the good guys, and another pile saying the banks are various descriptions, we only had emails in one pile. I'll let you, dear listener, work out which pile that was.
If it was Family Fortunes and said, are the banks good?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. Well, not only did we get emails, I received a number of WhatsApp messages from people who I've dealt with in the past and a couple of phone calls. I normally prefer, for those of you that are listening to this and you do have my number, I do prefer a text message first to arrange a time rather than just a complete call, although I will respond to calls if you leave a message. But safe to say, biggest response we've had. So the responses were along the lines of, hang on a minute, have you guys finally, lost the plot? What is this that you're trying to tell us? So if you haven't listened to that previous episode,
that's it.
I'm going to say previous.
That's easy for you to say. The word I'm
searching for is episode. If you haven't listened to the previous episode, I encourage you to go there and listen to it now. However, let me just very briefly cover what liens are. So a lien, effectively, I suppose, is when one is looking to register a charge against someone. It's a legal lien is a right, let me get this straight, it's a right at common law for a man to retain that which is rightfully continually in his possession and belonging to another until the present and include claims of the person in possession are satisfied. Now, if you think of it from a mortgage or a loan, then the mortgage or the loan has a charge over property or over something belonging to you. You might feel that that's less than fair, let's say, if the terms of the mortgage, the charge, the loan, or whatever it is, change significantly, or if you've been stitched up like a kipper by the banks. Now, what I mean by that is, if you, for those of you that are old enough, cast your mind back to 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, when we had a banking crisis, and there was a very famous group called the GRG, the Global Restructuring Group of the Royal Bank of Scotland. And for those of you that want a sort of in-depth look into them, there's a fantastic book called Shredded by Ian Fraser, and it's called Inside RBS, the Bank That Broke Britain. Now, Ian Fraser is a financial journalist of some standing. I mean, if you look him up, he's got a huge track record, and he was very detailed and very intimately involved with the whole RBS process and how it went. And one of the chapters he's written is called The Largest Theft Anywhere Ever, and it's a whole chapter about GRG and how it all worked, and it is fascinating reading. Have you read that, Nigel?
No, I haven't actually. I haven't actually read that one. I've read the one about HSBC and their role in doing drug cartel money laundering, and effectively the bank was declared too big for any criminal charges to be brought against it. But Ray, just looking at all these sort of behaviors, and I know it sounds like we're bank bashing, and that's because we are, but it's one of those things that in the global crisis of 2008, 9, 10, and the ripples still beyond, there was only one banker who was jailed over it. Now, you can, say whether that's right or wrong, but the poor guy that did, he really wasn't anything much to do with it. I think he was more of a trader that kind of made a few gambles the wrong way, probably because that's what they did, and he copped for it. So far, nobody has really, in terms of the management of it, has suffered anything for this. So, Ray, that book sounds like one on my list. I think I've still got some credits on the old Audible, so
yep,
I'll have a listen to that.
Go for it.
Yeah.
It's quite, I mean, I knew it was bad, and we did actually interview a guy from a former GRG guy in one of our previous episodes, if you remember that.
Yeah.
And he was quite shy and sheepish, but he generally had, the gist was he'd left the business because he didn't like the way they were behaving. Well, I can see why. I can absolutely see why. So for those of you who don't know, what GRG was called the Global Restructuring Group, and the bank needed to sort out its balance sheet. So basically what they did was they took perfectly good, normal trading businesses, and they moved them into GRG, the Global Restructuring Group, which was to refinance them and get them back to financial profitability. But the thing was, they were already financially profitable. What buggered them up was the bank putting them into GRG, who suddenly started charging them, in some cases, £2,000 a week in extra charges for the restructuring, and then refinancing loans and giving them loans at ridiculous rates and so on. And they drove 9 out of 10 businesses to the wall. And I mean, it's tragic, some of the stories behind them, absolutely tragic. But
I was going to say, Ray, and fortunately for us, we were the 1 in 10 that stood up and told them to get knotted.
Well, I know you were. You told me that story. But I mean, there's here I'm reading where the purchase of the assets of distressed businesses in some cases were purchased by RBS staff themselves. So they didn't even hide the fact, they didn't even bring in sort of friends and family. They just bought it themselves. They actually set up a company called West Register, which was part of RBS. And GRG would go in, and there's one case here, which is quite interesting. But it says, GRG rejected a hotel's business restructuring proposals without bothering to properly examine them. In an email to an RBS colleague, a GRG manager wrote, "I'll save you time. The answer is no on all points." Quite entertaining if you have time. In another case, since confirmed to be Chris Richardson and Ines Ernie Bernstein's Coniston Hotel in Kent, GRG gave a West Register manager free rein to talk down the hotel's valuation as part of an alleged strategy of picking up the nearly completed project on the cheap. With the hotel's value allegedly talked down from 7.7 million to between 2.5 and 3 million, and the removal of funding by RBS, the business unsurprisingly collapsed into administration, and its assets were then purchased by West Register, which had done the talking down. The example shows that West Register was involved within days of a transfer to GRG, and West Register had a major influence on the outcome for the customer. I mean, this was regarded as normal within GRG, and it was endemic across the bank because there were various parliamentary reports and all that kind of. Anyway, utterly, utterly shocking. And a number of people who challenged it, the Ross McEwen, who was the chief exec then, said we'll go to law if they've got a grievance. This is what he said on national TV. I think it was on Newsnight or something. Well, if they've got a grievance, they can always go to a lawyer and sue us. Now, when you've got SMEs, a small business that's turning over between 2 and 20 million, which is what the range was, coming up against the bank, which has $1 billion in legal fund, it's not surprisingly that quite a lot of these things didn't see the light of day because they deliberately orchestrated a process of making sure that they did not. Now, okay, I hear people listening and going, well, that's all very well, but that was then, this is now. They've been tamed, have they not? Have they not had their wings clipped, etc., etc.? Well, interestingly enough, when you read the book further, it names names. It has a huge list of names of people who were in control of a GRG or managers within GRG. And guess what? When they disbanded GRG, many of them left. Now, where do you think they went, Nigel? Did they go to become taxi drivers? Did they go to become chefs, holiday reps? Did they appear as presenters on Antiques Roadshow? I mean, if you're high up,
no, right.
Where would you go, Nigel, to keep money coming in?
Yeah, I mean, I'm firmly believing that they went to monasteries and convents and atoned for their sins. Surely that's the right answer. No,
don't call me Shirley, but yes, you would think that would happen, but actually no. There is a chapter now. It's called number 39 in this book, and it's called "The Guilty Men," and it lists them all. And it not only lists them all, but it says where they went to. So I did a little bit of digging, as you do. You can go to Companies House, you can put in somebody's name, if you know roughly their name, well, not roughly, but if you know their name and roughly their date of birth, that sort of thing. You can easily check when they were directors of a company in Companies House, because we know the company, which was part of RBS. We can go there, we can click on their name, and we can follow their progress. And guess where? So I have a 100% record of checking 6 names, only 6. There are about 30 in there, but I thought, well, I'll do a straw poll, see what happens. The first 6 names is randomly picked. Guess where they all work now? You're correct, in other banks. And some of those banks have, as I've discovered from some of the people that contacted us, have a bit of a reputation for following what seems to be the GRG playbook. In other words, they are at a position now with interest rates rising. They are orchestrating a default because the terms and conditions that they've given to some business owners are, there's clauses in there they can always fall back on. Lifeboat clauses, apparently they're called, for the bank, so that if the business gets in distress, the bankers can all jump into the lifeboat and bugger off, taking all the assets with them and leave the ship behind to sink. And these engineered defaults are wide and varied, but they include things like, if you miss a payment, or if you're the usual one is your EBITDA, which is your earnings before interest, et cetera, don't match a particular target that they have set. So a common one is to say that the EBIT target must be 200 or 300% above the payment that you make. So if you are to make a payment of, I don't know, let's arbitrarily say your monthly payment is £5,000, then you need to have a profit target of £20,000 to make that payment. So you could have £18,000 or £19,000, but you're still incredibly profitable, but it's a default according to their terms and conditions, and then they can step in. And this is what's been happening. And this is the kind of feedback we're starting to get. So the lessons from 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, don't seem to have been learned, or at least they were learned by one particular bank,
I was
but
going
the
to say,
individuals within it have simply moved to others
I
and
was
are
going to
carrying
say,
on the facade.
right, not so much lessons learned, more the process perfected.
Exactly.
Because you know what, when we were in that position and I went in, just before I went in, I saw them all gathered in this room, and they were all gathered around this desk, and there was somebody sat in a high wing-back chair, and I just heard him sort of say in the background, I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse. And you know, I thought, this is strange, but there we are.
The special effects on this program are fantastic. I mean,
I know. Hey,
those of you listening are getting your money's worth, that's for sure.
but yeah, it's the same old thing. It's the same old thing. You know, you will see these people. There are some very famous, high-profile people who've been up to no good, and what do you see them doing again in the future? Oh, they reappear up to no good. You see it whenever they're doing programs about con artists, scammers, people that set up fake companies, collapse them, taking money, all these sort of things. What is it? A leopard doesn't change its spots. And you tend to find that these people are good, they're in demand. Why? Because there's a huge opportunity here, folks. And the trouble is, the reason that we're doing this bit, Ray, isn't it, is we've seen it. I've been through it. I went through it for several years. And believe you me, I was working probably 15, 20-hour days for maybe a year to hang on to things. And it ended up, folks, I'll cut to the chase. It ended up where a firm of accountants that they'd appointed, that we had to have the privilege of paying for, that firm of accountants, the partner actually stood, he sat next to me at the particular meeting where we're all gathered around the table, and the banks were expecting it all to be confirmed and handed over to them, all with a nice little ribbon on top for virtually nothing. And the partner just said, no, I think you've got it wrong. I said, Nigel and his company are fine, and they've been running fine, and there's no issues. And they were apoplectic with that decision. They could not believe that the accountants had sided with me against the bank. But folks, this is what you're up against. It really did feel like it was me against the entire bank, and it's a scary situation that you're in. And for many people, they had the interest rate swaps, they had other issues in there that have been missold or pressure sold, or been a key thing that they suddenly added to it that had to be done in order to get any of the loan. And typically people are in a position where they're, you know, if they don't get the loan, they're out of business. And then these terms and conditions attached to the loan are so onerous and so penal and so unfair that you have to sort of accept them. So it's Hobson's choice on these things. Anyway, if you've sort of been in that situation, this is why we want to talk about it, because what's been revealed and what we're discovering more and more there are potential sort of solutions to it. And if you think that these things happen quickly, think again. If you think that they may never happen, that might be true. But you look at Ray, the scandal over the post here in the UK, the number of firms that operated, or the number of people, I should say, that operated a post office whereby they were accused of fiddling the books and stealing money.
Yeah.
And you looked at the, I mean, God knows how this ever got to court, because if it was me investigating that, you look at them and you go, right, okay, is this a highly organized professional scamming organization that is ripping off the post office? And you probably say, well, I'm not sure. I don't think so. Or is it husband and wife or family running post office, and has been for many years? That sounds more like it. So do we think that they have all come up with the same way of ripping off the post office and all the rest of it? Or do we think there might be something fundamentally wrong with the accounting software? You know, it doesn't take a bloody genius to work out that these things stank to high heaven, but the system was against them and they got pressured. They got steamrollered. People got jailed, lives ruined, lost their business, lost their homes and all the rest of it. And it's only now just unwinding. And this is, you know, tens of years later when this all happened. And even now, they're still not getting paid their compensation. And what we're saying is, folks, sometimes you feel you're on your own. Sometimes you feel you're the only one that's in this situation. What we want to say is, look, we're finding more and more people coming to us with conversations saying things have gone wrong and it's impacting their ability to raise money, or it's impacting their ability to fairly value their business so that they can raise the money and move on. They want to cut ties with banks and move away, but banks are holding on to them. They've got their claws into them. They've got, you know, charges placed on the register, and they can't escape these sort of things. Personal guarantees are being affected when they don't need to be. Businesses downvalued, taken off them, and things like that. And it's kind of, this is not right. So, is this the how to raise money sort of campaign thing?
Well,
I don't know. It's just
well, it could be just a couple.
It just feels
a couple of points. Yeah, for those that are listening, the post office scandal Nigel was talking about was called Horizon. It was a Horizon IT scandal, and there were 700 separate postmasters involved in that. 700. So that's a lot for one organization. But if you imagine, during the whole RBS scandal, it was tens of thousands of small businesses. Now, I think those tens of thousands of small businesses are still, or there are still tens of thousands of small businesses that are starting to feel the pressure, that are getting the pressure applied to them. In many cases, it might be absolutely justified, but I'm willing to bet that in many cases it's absolutely not justified. Now, one of the points I wanted to cover was some people said to me, well, I'm lodging a complaint with the FCA. Right, okay. The FCA is there for one reason only, and that is to make sure that the banks come away squeaky clean. Now, that is something I've always suspected. However, in writing, I have here saying that the FCA came out of the debacle. So this was the inquiry into GRG. The FCA came out of the debacle looking craven and captured, more interested in protecting banks than in protecting consumers from the abuses that were so clearly identified by their own skilled people, or of upholding good standards of conduct in the finance sector. Now, unfortunately, that is still going on to this day, and there are a number of cases that are going through. Some of the there's another case that's going through right now, which is Clydesdale Bank have been taken to court by a number of individuals, and I think it's into week 3. It's into week 3 on that particular case. So it'll be interesting to see the outcome of that LIBOR rigging case. But that, again, is yet another example of the banks all getting together and colluding. And there's another case happening next March, which again is about banks colluding. I won't go into that yet because I haven't had the case management system, the case management detail on that one yet. I do have the case management detail on the LIBOR ringing with the Clydesdale Bank and Virgin Money. So I've got all that, so I can speak reasonably with some authority on it. But Nigel and I, you know, having worked professionally ourselves, like to get corroboration and check things out before we start talking about them. So the purpose of this podcast was really to address the frequently asked questions that people had from our deluge of emails and calls, etc., and to answer some of those questions. So one of the very first ones I got when the podcast was launched, virtually within an hour of it being launched, I received a phone call from someone who knew me, and he said, "I've just listened to that podcast. Said fascinating." He said, "Are you guys on something?" And I said, "Well, we're high on life, if that's what you mean.
We're on a mission.
We're determined and we're on a mission." But apart from that, no, we're not on any artificial substances or even official substances. We're not on anything. He said, "Well, it just came across. It just sounded mad. You sounded absolutely mad." Now, I think he was referring to what we were talking about rather than our state of mind. But I did manage to put him straight on that. A couple of others involved around where is the law on this? Does this actually work? Can you repeat the process? And a couple of them said, "Why are you charging £2,000 for this?" Now, okay, so to address those in reverse order, We were not charging £2,000. At the 36th minute of the previous episode, I mentioned that if you were to take this to court in an initial application, your legal fees might be at least £2,000 just to put in an initial application. And then it would probably be an awful lot more. So that was not us, for the avoidance of doubt, saying that's what we will charge. What I said was, depending on how this goes, if we are going to be swamped by this, then we will certainly discuss with individuals a process that we can put into place that could help them. And we would have to discuss how that would be funded. Now, there are charges to be paid. There are court fees, various things, but there are ways of getting applications into court without paying fees. But our process did not involve court. So there are avenues open to you. If you're listening to this and you feel aggrieved by the bank, there are avenues open to you. And the avenue we were discussing in the previous email was about a commercial lien. Now, the commercial lien is governed by Halsbury's Laws of England, Volume 4. You can Google that and look it up. And you will see there that the Halsbury's Laws of England on commercial liens go to a huge number of chapters. Now, if you click on any of the links, it will take you through to the detail of that. However, it is behind a paywall and you will have to subscribe to it. Now, the subscription is £1,900 a year. It's a lot of money. The way the website works is you can click on the link, you can start to see a bit of the information. So it's a bit like if you click on a link to the Telegraph or the Guardian and it shows you the first sort of paragraph, or the Economist or any of those others that are hiding behind the paywall, the Times. It shows you the first paragraph and then it goes kind of all fuzzy. And it says if you want to read on, you have to subscribe. So you can click on Halsbury's Laws of England and you can get all the detail in there. Now, I've got lots of the information from Halsbury, so you don't need to do that. So as I said in the previous email, if you want a sort of, not a cheat sheet, but if you want information on this, I can certainly send it to you. I have a couple of just pretty much Word PDF documents with notes that I'll happily send out. But let's just get into this lien process again, because a number of people have started the process. And the process of a commercial lien, it's a legal lien in the sense that it's arisen by operation of law, whereas a mortgage is contractual. So if you feel aggrieved by, let's say it's a bank, you could take the bank to the FCA. I don't think you're going to get much joy there. You could raise an action in court with the bank. That's going to be very expensive and they have much deeper pockets than you, and will drag it out. Or you can go down the commercial lien route. Now, a commercial lien is essentially, it's a right to defend an action, and it entitles the holder to sue a third party who they feel has committed a wrong. Now, you're going to say, well, okay, I've got a loan from the bank. What wrong have they committed? Well, I'm not going to say here and now in this podcast what wrong they have committed, but let's just say every case is different. And it does start with a process of discovery. Now, in the process of discovery, and by the way, this has been tried and tested. I have spoken this week to people who are doing this, and the stage that the particular individuals I am talking to are at is over a number of years, they have fine-tuned this process. They know it works. They've got evidence that it works. There is, in fact, one that they mentioned to me as being hot off the press, is hoping to conclude very soon. And when I said very soon, what do you mean by very soon? And what do you mean by conclusion? And conclusion is, they said, well, we've gone through the process, and I will go into that in a minute, just sort of briefly. We've gone through the process. That process ended several weeks ago, and we're now looking at monetizing the document. So that's the process. And what does success look like? Well, in this case, they are looking at over £1 million in compensation from a bank. And they haven't got it yet, but they are close to it. And they are keeping me informed. And the conversation I had to them, they were quite excited earlier on the week about the progress that's been made, because as part of the process is giving the individuals within the bank a right of recall within a certain time frame, and if they don't, then you cross a line, and that's the line, Nigel, that I said in the last episode, that compensation multiplies. First of all, it goes up times 4, and then it goes up times 100. They have now gone beyond the times 100 part. So that's why they were quite excited, because that now means they have a financial instrument that they can sell. Now, who do they sell it to? Merchant banks, brokers, traders who will buy these things because they are financial instruments that can be swapped and traded for value. In other words, you can get money out of it. So their particular claim has gone through the process. It has not been rebutted, rebuffed, or answered. It's been ignored. And according to the maxims of Halsbury's law of commercial liens, once that threshold is passed, you now have a document that you can enforce through a court. In other words, you can get a registered charge against property. Now, when we say taking on the banks, you're not actually taking on the bank. So name of bank limited. You're taking on the directors and the individuals within that bank, because a bank itself is just a corporation. It doesn't do anything. It creates no harm against you. It's the individuals and the decisions within the bank by these individuals that creates the harm. So if you're listening to this and you have a bank loan, a mortgage even, and you feel aggrieved at the way you've been treated, get in touch, hello@htrmoney.co.uk, and let's see if there's anything we can do. Not every case will there be something we can do, but probably, again, looking at the Pareto principle, 80-20, I would imagine it's an 80-20 rule, as these things are. So the lien process, as I said in the previous episode, comes in 2 parts. There's a discovery part, and then there's the lien part itself. The discovery part has 3 documents to it, and the lien process itself has 5 documents to it. So it's 8 documents in total. They are to be served at a particular moment in time. You have to record when they have been posted and sent. You then have the clock ticking. When that clock ticks, you then send the next letter. And then you have a certain number of days. And that could be 10 days, 14 days, or 3 days, depending on the document that's sent. But it's usually 10 days and 3 days. If after that time there's been no response, you then send the next document. Now, each time you've got the document, and the documents are between 2 and 8 pages long, depending. And I've got the templates. When you send the document, you have to record it by going to the post office, getting it tracked, and having the tracking number. Then once it's been delivered, you need to print off the delivery receipt to show that it has been received by the individuals in question. Once you've got those documents served and you've got all the evidence that they've been received and there's been no responses, you have at the end a document that has a value. Now, what kind of value does it have? Well, in the case of the ones that are getting quite excited that I'm dealing with, the value at the moment is over £80 million. That's the value. Now, that seems crazy. But remember I said that if the threshold a timing threshold is passed, then the compensatory element of your claim multiplies by 100. So that's where we are with this one. Now, can you then get 80 million for it? No. But can you get a percentage of the value of that document? The answer is yes. So what can you get? Well, the answer is between 2 and 3%, depending on which merchant bank, broker, or agent you manage to sell it to. And they are in discussions with 2 at the moment over various amounts. Now, what are they in discussion with? The banks are doing their diligence. They want to see copies of the documents before they'll get the originals. The originals are the ones that have value, not the copies. So you can quite easily send copies to a potential buyer and then say you have the originals, and you would hand deliver the originals in exchange for a transfer of money. So how much money is our guy going to get? Well, he's going to get between 2 and 3% of 80 million. Does that cover his loss? Yes. Is there a compensatory element to that for him? Yes. What does the bank do with it? Well, they can trade it on further and make even more money out of it because they know who will buy properly. How can I put it? If they have done their diligence on it and they have got their name and reputation behind it and they've purchased it, then they can sell that on for a further percentage. So they will recover their money. So these documents have a value. So the process is, as I've said, the discovery process, which is a notice of conditional acceptance. So there's 3 documents: a notice of conditional acceptance, a notice of opportunity to cure, and then a notice of default. That's the discovery documents. Once you go through those, you then go into the common law lien process. Now, one question that I had was, well, what happens if you send them a letter, you send them a notice of conditional acceptance and they come back to you? It's very rare that they do, very rare at this stage. But if they do, then the negotiations can begin. Let's put it that way.
But Ray, didn't you say that the fact is they can't respond because they haven't got things right? So they're almost forced to be quiet on this and silent on this because they don't actually have the correct sort of structure, process, legal paperwork, whatever you want to call it, in place. So
interestingly enough, I have in my hands here a letter in response to one of those. I have in my hands, and it's dated. So what date are we now? We are the 17th of October. This is dated the 11th of October. I won't say who it's from or who it's to, but it is in response to the notice of conditional acceptance. And it says, please find enclosed a copy, blah, 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 which they intend to rely upon, etc., etc. A copy shall be filed at court. To avoid blah, 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 you need to discuss the case. You know, it's from their lawyers. So it's not even from them. However, Nigel, of the 7 questions asked, how many do you think they answered?
Ooh, all 8 of them.
The answer is none.
None.
No answer at all. All they've simply done is fallen back on what they know and love and understand, and that is to threaten. But it doesn't answer any of the salient points. Now, there is a phone number in here. Please call us to discuss the situation and allow us to try and help you, is what the lawyer's letter helpfully says. And I'm going to follow that through and find out what they've done about it. But I do know that they have called the lawyers up, and it's basically, his exact words to me were, this is like a comedy sketch. It's as if, you know, they're completely ignoring what's been plonked in front of them. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes. So,
well, Ray, I was going to say, in the UK recently, all the talk with politicians was about the cancelling of the high-speed 2 rail line, HS2. Oh, yeah. And they would ask a politician, are you going to cancel HS2, yes or no? Well, what you really, fail to understand is that the situation at the moment going out there the inflation has had the interest rate reversionary effect of, by the way, have you seen Mrs. Miggins has got a pie shop sale, going on or something? And it's that sort of thing. They can't give an answer. So they give you a whole load of spiel. And as Ray says, normally it's a really scary, threatening, we will crush your credit score rating. We will do this to you. We will take your children and pull their toenails out. Whatever it is absolutely terrifying. And that's what they rely on, isn't it, Ray? People crumbling.
Absolutely. But let me just sort of reinforce what a commercial lien is. It's a non-judicial remedy for any wrongdoing. It offers a lawful way to secure your property and recover losses if there's been fraudulent activity. A properly perfected common law lien process does not require an order of the court to be legally enforced. It's a defense to any type of civil wrongdoing. It's a right, or the right to enforce a lien arises naturally under common law. It is never a claim. It's only ever a defense to a civil wrongdoing. A lien right, therefore, naturally arises when a bank or anyone commits a fraud or misrepresents their position. And I have to say, probably 80% of the banks, that will be the case. So if you have sent them the document, which this guy did, he sent the notice of conditional acceptance and he received a reply from the bank, but the reply bears no relationship to it. It doesn't even say we acknowledge receipt. It just simply goes on to rabbit on about a whole load of rubbish, none of which is relevant. So what's going to happen now? They're going to be sent a notice of opportunity to cure. Then they're going to be sent a notice of default. So that's the first part of that process. Then we have the lien documents itself, which is a notice of lien interest. And then the Fifth document is an affidavit of obligation. Now, that's the important one. So the first 4 documents are merely setting up the process, putting people on notice, making them aware that this is what you're going to do. And then you have the affidavit of obligation itself, which has to be notarized. You ideally want to get it notarized by a solicitor who's notarizing your signature, or you can get it witnessed by 2 other men. Common law allows you to have 2 good men of good standing to witness your signature, and then you have your triumvirate, if you like, your 3 people. So that's the affidavit of obligation. After that, you've got another notice of fault and opportunity to cure. Finally, a notice of default, and then the 5th one is an affidavit of non-response, and that's the crucial one. That's the one that gives you the 100 times, and it's a doozy. It's absolutely brilliant. So now, because of that process, it can all be done within 90 days. Okay, within 90 days, and that includes exemplary damages at 100 times the original value of the lien principal. Now, it's a properly perfected process which gives rise to an equitable lien, and it's capable of registration as a legal charge. All liens served are capable of being enforced in the same way all charges are, but without the order of a court. The liens are served are secured against the personal estate of each chief exec or director involved. Even an unregistered lien is treated as the equivalent of an equitable charge, which can be sold to certain merchant banks agents for a discounted price. So it is a thing. For those of you that are listening to this now and listen to the first episode and are thinking, well, you guys are clearly mad. We are not. It is a thing. It's an actual process. It does offer you a remedy without the expense of court. And it's a proper process. It's been around for hundreds of years. If you want to subscribe to Halsbury's Law of England, Volume 4, on the nature of legal liens, go for it. If you want to ask your solicitor about it, go for it. Ask him to check it out. Ask him to confirm whether this is a thing or not and what you can do with it. Now, I have to say, most lawyers, when I mention it, they don't really know. They haven't. It's not something I recall being taught about in university when I was doing my law degree, or when I was doing the law diploma, or even when I was working in company law. We never came across these. I did hear the term a number of times, but never really took much notice of it, because I suspected it was probably, well, the bank's got a charge. That's a lien. That's what it is. The bank has taken a charge against commercial property or residential property, and that's known as a lien, which it is, of course. But nobody knows it can be done in reverse, and boy, it can. So if you are listening to this and you think, right, I want more information on this, I'm convinced. These guys they've convinced me that this is a thing. At least do yourself a favor and get more information on it. hello@htrmoney.co.uk. We will send you a sort of a fact sheet, for want of a better word, and you can run that by your solicitor. Now, don't expect or don't ask your solicitor to do this for you. You do not need your solicitor to do this for you. You can do this yourself. We can help you with templates and help you with the process itself. So you don't need to be paying lawyers for this. You can pay us instead, Nigel. Don't pay lawyers, pay us. We'll help you out.
Yeah.
No, as each person, and we have had people contacting us saying, yes, I'd like to know more about this. Tell me, how can we do this, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We are here to help. And if this does become a thing, and we end up sort of raising a flag and raising an army and marching on England, marching on London and the courts, then, who knows where this might go. But in these uncertain times where people are staring down the barrel of, perhaps losing a business, or perhaps losing a property, or the banks are getting nasty, and you think, well, my only recourse is to, a defensive one, or to go to my lawyer or something. No, there is another answer. And the answer is, Nigel, a commercial lien.
There we go. So, folks, lean into it, as they say.
Oh, boom, boom.
Hey, how about that? I'm here all week, folks. Yeah, folks, it's one of these things that, I don't know. You feel like you're going down rabbit holes. You feel like you're definitely in the wrong. You feel like it's all going to go wrong. You feel like, you know, this can't be possibly be true and all the rest of it. But what we're finding is there are people out there who've got nothing left to lose, and you should always be afraid of the person who's got nothing left to lose, because they will, you know, they will not respond to the usual bullying threats to keep people in their place. And it sounds like even saying it out loud sounds really quite crazy, but yeah, there's an awful lot out there where I think in the future, folks, there will be some retrospective legislation, or there will be something that says, okay, you've got 30 days to lodge your claim, otherwise we're going to shut the door. And then anything else, if you find it wasn't set up correctly, it's tough. So I think you've got to get into this now. I think you've got to investigate it now. And, you know, there are things out there that, quite frankly, Ray, you're the same as me. You kind of think to yourself, how the hell did we not know about this? And maybe it's one of these things, it's hiding in plain sight. And when you have a bunch of people who are kind of acting in a coordinated fashion, and they are using the same sort of language or terminology, then, you know, why would you ever doubt it? And Ray, we've spoken about this before, haven't we? We read that book. Was it The Creature from Jekyll Island?
Yeah.
And others. And in there, they say, look, whenever you're watching the media or you're listening to the government and they say the word crisis, what you tend to find is there is a tax change, and normally a tax increase, that follows all that messaging. And lo and behold, this is what's going on. You know, we're at the highest level ever. And how many times have they used the word crisis? It's every other word that comes out of their mouth. And all they're doing is that they're priming us to be willing to accept whatever goes on. They talk about inflation's going to go up, so it did. Interest rates are going to go up, so they did. It's amazing. If you start looking at the patterns, this is what happens. Ray, I've said this time and time again. Whenever they do the stories about, you know, the XL bully dogs, you know, dangerous dogs, basically eating 10,000 babies a day and all the rest of it, and they talk about it when they go out and survey people. What's the most worrying thing happening in the country today? Dangerous dogs appears at either number 1 or number 2. When it's not in the media, dangerous dogs doesn't appear in the top 10 of things to any great number. And so it's only what we're being told. And at the moment, we're being told we should reorganize our debt. We are being told that we should, you know, the banks are there to help us with our mortgages. We are being told this, that, and the other. And the reason is they are priming us, and they are basically saying, we've told you how you can keep paying your mortgage. Therefore, if you don't pay it, we're going to take it off you. They are priming us to take things off us. And I don't think it's right or proper or fair. And so all we're trying to do is get on a soapbox and rant about it. Raymondo, I think I need to lie down.
You do. Right. So, yeah. For
just
those
get in touch.
Interested, hello@htrmoney.co.uk. If you do have my number, please use it sparingly, but send me a WhatsApp message, a text message, something like that, to say you've been listening to this episode and you know, you're interested in more information. We will look at, you know, we'll give you our opinion on it. We'll think if we think you've got something, great. If we think you don't have anything, fine. But there will be a process that needs to be started. That process is real simple. It involves what's called a data subject access request, otherwise known freedom of information request, where you are seeking to see a copy of your loan agreement, or seeking to see your loan agreement to find out what the terms and conditions are. So that's the first stage. Now, you may already have that, but that's not the point. The bank or lender should have it as well. And in many cases, they do not. And I have examples of letters saying we cannot locate the loan agreement. Now, if that's the case, then there are certain other avenues open to you. But if they do have the agreement itself, then it involves looking at the terms and conditions and analysing it, making sure that it complies with, amongst other things, especially if you're in England and Wales, you're needing to rely on and not restricted to the law of Property Miscellaneous Provisions Act 1989. You're then relying on the Law of Property Act 1925. There's a few things in there. Section 44 of the Companies Act 2006 may not have been complied with, et cetera, et cetera. There's a whole load of, unfair terms in consumer contract regulations 1999, which there's a number of material breaches that we have seen that these contracts do not meet the required target. So it could be that you have, a pretty open and shut case where you can write to the bank immediately and they'll hold, and this has happened, where they hold their hands up and goes, yep, we're sorry, we've seen what's happened here. And then they get into a process of negotiation with you. How can we fix this? And again, for those of you who are further down the line, let's say you've butted heads with the bank and they've handed it over to a legal firm or a firm of debt collectors. Well, again, there's a process involved there, because debt collectors are what's known in law as interlopers, unless they have what's called a deed of assignment. And I am here to tell you that 99.9% of the time, in other words, I've not seen it yet, that deed of assignment is either not done or it's done incorrectly, in which case the debt collectors have got no legal authority to do anything, to hassle you, to do anything. And in one particular case, I'm helping somebody where he's getting text messages, phone calls, letters, all the rest of it. And it's nothing short of harassment, which it has been. And we've managed to put a stop to that with one letter. And if they do contact him again, they are liable to pay a financial penalty. And in one particular case, we have an invoice that's just gone out to a debt collecting firm for £2,300 for breaching the terms of the letter that was sent to them, because they were sending it to a vulnerable person. It was harassment, and they ignored the letter to say that there was a vulnerable person there and to cease and desist. They ignored all that. So they've received an invoice for £2,300. And if they don't pay it, it will go to court, small claims. You can submit a small claim online for the court for them to pay it. So don't be thinking there's nothing you can do, or don't be thinking you're powerless. Absolutely not. The people, Nigel, are powerful. Putting popular front. For those of you that are older, and there is something that can be done. So everyone's circumstance will be different, but if you're listening to this, reach out, or if you know of someone or suspect of someone that's probably in a bit of a pickle and don't know what to do or where to turn, fine. If you've got a solicitor involved already on your side and you want him to check us out, then get him to get in touch with us. hello@hdrmoney.co.uk. More than happy to chat with them and talk them through the process. Can't say fairer than that, Nigel. What do you think? Is that fair? Is that a fair offer? I think that's very fair.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're not affected with it, just, when you're talking to people, just share the podcast episode or point people in the direction of it. It really helps. It's great for us and we thank you for it. If you want to review the podcast as well, on Apple Podcasts seems to be the best place to get reviews. They're the ones that we see most traction from. That would be great. We'd really appreciate it. It's very valuable information, or it's just something to help the old mental health when people feel that they're on their own and they're up against it. Maybe there's a few people in their corner who can give them a bit of support and help through troubled times. So we can't guarantee anything. We can't promise anything. It's not advice. It's for fun and education only, etc., etc. Get us off the liability hook, but it's worth looking at. Really, folks, it's worth looking at, and share it. Share it with people. Spread the love. Sharing is caring.
Absolutely.
There you go. So,
all right. I've been Ray McLennan.
And I'm still Wolfie Smith. Power to the people.
Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the How to Raise Money podcast. It's made for people who want to raise money as debt or investment equity for their business or property proposal or empire. The website has all the useful links and underlying research, and you can get downloads of the checklists and other useful information. See you next time, where we can show you how to raise money. There is abundance. There is money enough for everyone on the planet. The question is, who has yours?